Hello! What about a Japanese-inspired build? Well, I figured this topic is rather huge, so today we will be focusing on more traditional houses. Whether you want to build a more realistic one or just take the parts you like to create something new is up to you. But first of all, let's have a look at these example builds that are prepared to get a general idea on how Japanese buildings can look like in Minecraft. I tried to consider as many of the key characteristics, which are the use of wood. Traditional Japanese buildings use a lot of wood and have vertical and horizontal beams that support the whole house. Between these beams is a bamboo lath that gets covered with clay. Sounds a bit familiar when we think of medieval houses. As you can see, I'm using dark oak wood, acacia wood, spruce wood and some mangrove wood. You can use any wood type, but don't get stuck on this. For texture or a different shade, you can use other blocks too. The color they have is more important. Curved sloping roofs. Well, not all roofs are curved, but it is something that comes to mind. This type of roof definitely draws attention to them and is very aesthetically pleasing. Common roof shapes are hipped roofs, as in this pagoda, a gabled roof like you can see here. Down here is a simple shed roof and a hip and gable roof. These are basically a mix between those with a small gable at the top. Engawa, a Japanese type of porch. Their role is to bring the inside and outside of the house together. Respect for nature. Homes and buildings are seen as one with nature instead of being opposed to it. So definitely build some gardens along your builds, though this is not the topic of this video. You can be in the middle of Tokyo and visit a shrine in a forest. It's very impressive. Inside you have an area where shoes are placed, and for the flooring you can use either kelp or bamboo blocks. Movable screens and doors are usually built out of wooden frames with translucent paper. Here I just use birch trapdoors. Well, just next to this little house is space for another one, so let's start building. This won't be block for block, but I will show the process of coming up with one design so you can build a house that you like. This is a townhouse and usually these are very narrow but long. And the first floor is space for the entrance or a shop, and above is the second floor. I assume you can do more if you'd like to. So let's outline our house. Just make sure this long side has an uneven number of blocks because of the roof. Building up the walls by 6 or 7 blocks should do, and before we build up more, let's add this little shed roof first. Full blocks are good enough for this, but make sure to take a variant that has also slabs. And most importantly, make sure the remaining long side is still an uneven number. Then build up the rest of the wall, and don't worry about it not lining up at the front. This is adding just a bit of depth. I will make this house quite similar to the first one, and either feel free to do so too or just take this as inspiration to come up with your own. You can build a different sized or shaped one, just how you want. Next come the first details like windows and a door, but you can do that a bit later too, depending on which mode you're playing. You see, for me it doesn't matter in creative. This brown is looking rather bland, so let's add some more color to it. What you want to do now is to add squares with different blocks, like for example here in the front, at the side, or a different color under the roof. Figuring out the colors might be a bit tricky, so a few suggestions would be grey, white, orange and brown, grey, white, orange and blue, grey to green, like brown, brown and red, and this one here will be 3 different shades of brown, mangrove red and later also some orange. Generally pick a few neutral colors, which is easy with all those brown wood types, and pick 1 or 2 colors that stand out. Other neutral colors are grey, white and black. Then I go around and add texture to every color. Mean some grey and brown terracotta or concrete for the dark oak, stripped mangrove logs and pink-red terracotta for the mangrove, and different shades of grey for the roof. Then it is time to add the details, but before so, let's have a short intermission to have a look at what is possible. A few vertical and horizontal lines we already have with the base layer, but we can also add a rim of stairs and some stacks of blocks to break up the surface of the walls even more and to add some depth. That is especially useful for the sides. Then we can also create smaller vertical lines with fences and horizontal lines with signs. These fit really well above windows or next to them. You don't have to take a color similar to the wall, you could also go for acacia or mangrove for a tint of color. Hanging signs are great for a small line of flags, just place them under trapdoors under the roof. This time definitely take a color that stands out, but that also fits well with the rest. Here the blue has a nice contrast with the orange and here the red connects with the mangrove. Then obviously we have windows everywhere. I keep them really simple and try to recreate this paper window look with fences and birch trapdoors behind. Another option would be scaffolding with birch trapdoors and when you play a newer version, copper grates. Despite being really simple, they look great for these kinds of builds. To add something above, use again trapdoors or extinguished campfires. Since the first floor is supposed to be a small shop, some banners seem fitting. Either use blank ones or color them. To make them look like there's text on them, just take one banner, add the brick pattern, then the horizontal line one with the color of the banner, and the outline again with the color of the banner. For this pattern you need a flower charged banner pattern. These banners look best when you use a few different ones so that they do stand out but are not too much. You can even have 2 blocks beneath a chain with a banner on top, so this looks like a hanging down sign. When fitting, you can also add trapdoors and buttons for more details, but it is easy to overdo those. For a house that stands alone, you can definitely add a small balcony as a side, but I imagine these city houses being side to side to use as much space as possible. This is why a small corner of the house is actually a garden. As for lanterns, we have 2 options. Either use a normal lantern or build a bigger one using a fog light surrounded by mangrove trapdoors. You might have noticed that everything is upscaled by a bit, like the door is 2x3, and that gives us a bit more space for details and also allows us to add bigger windows and details. All in all, making a build slightly bigger makes it easier. On the roof you can add these lines of slabs, they create the appearance of tiles. With details you have to take your time and it is not fast at all. But finding just the right placement of your details is one of the most fun parts of building, and with this kind of build you can use many of them. I will focus on finishing the front first, and for that I fill in the windows. You will see me change things up when I think it would look a bit better different, but feel free to do so too. The small roof looks like it needs some support, so some wooden beams will do. Figuring out the right distances between is a bit tricky though. Same goes for the big roof. Next I'm adding a few vertical and horizontal lines in the upper part before I added the slabs to the roof. While figuring out the distances between the beams was a bit tricky, this is a bit more tricky. But remember that you can leave out blocks at the sides, it just has to be symmetrical. At the bottom part I moved things around a bit until I was happy with them. The door is quite simple with 2 doors and 2 trapdoors above, making it look like one. Add some signs and texture, the roof and the front is finished. For the roof I am going for a gradient and try to keep it rather simple. You always want empty spaces so it doesn't look overcrowded. For the sides I am switching back and forth quite a lot, but just as in this example build I will break up the wall with vertical and horizontal lines and add windows wherever possible. You don't have to put too much thought and detail into the sides. With the texture alone it is quite interesting to look at already. These big empty walls are okay, most likely you will have more than one house next to each other anyways, so you won't see too much of it. A few flower pots and amphores make for the finishing touches. While this was heavily based on this first example here, you can also come up with a more creative house. The second one will be more like a farmhouse, so more like this one, but why not make the roof curved as in the pagoda and add a tower? Feel free to use any shape for a house you like, and you can also add more bits and blobs to it than me. The walls will be white for now as I haven't completely settled on a block palette, but dark oak will surely be there. Around the goals is a small porch. Just as I explained in the beginning, it is there to connect inside and outside. That small part will be a garden. As just mentioned, the roof will be curved just as in the pagoda. Go down for it, then at the tip up again. Figure this out once and you have all the corners. The roof is a bit weird at the top, but just connect it and it looks fine. The tower should be bigger than the roof, otherwise it looks a bit wacky. Then it is time to add the squares of differently colored blocks to it. The process is the same as in the city house and you don't have to overthink this again. Then I go around to add windows and the first details. We won't get more into this because it is the same as before. I don't want to bore you. And just like the details are the same, the texture is also the same. Start to see how this works. When building parts repeat over and over, you take the things you like and create something new. I even used the same block palette as before. I doubt there's a better combination for me right now, and like this you save time. But of course always try out new combinations, never get stuck on a way. With time you will learn which blocks look good together. Of course everyone likes a different way of texture, and if you don't like to texture at all, that's fine. For the tower I plan the design for one side and use it all the way around for symmetry, just as in the pagoda. A second roof looks nice and below I built a small balcony. That is giving the tower some use. Then it is time to add the finishing touches like signs and lanterns, and of course the little garden. It has a cute little pond with ramrocks in it. And with that the second example is finished. To make your Japanese city or town extra realistic, you should know that most of the power lines are overhead. When you are lucky enough to visit, you will see. Why? I'm not sure. But keep this in mind, and the power line doesn't have to be super detailed. As for the gardens, they are something else. This is just a sloppy part here, but they are incredibly beautiful and balanced with nature. Building a pagoda is easy and hard at the same time. Easy as in you have to build just one side and can flip the design, and hard as in coming up with the design and keeping it symmetrical. Don't be like me and end up with an even number making it unable to build the roof. Whoops. Pagodas always have an uneven number of floors. Either 3, 5, 7 or even 9. At the bottom is a simple stone platform and above comes the first floor with the entrance. The side will be the same all the way around, and above comes the second floor in which you will have to put the most thought. But remember, you just have to build this one side. Above you can copy this floor 3 more times and this one side is pretty much done. The whole is symmetric in itself, so each side of the pagoda looks the same. But really pay close attention to this floor being an uneven number of blocks, otherwise you won't be able to finish the roof. The roofs between the floors are long and curved, especially on the corners. It might be a bit tricky, but one other detail you can look out for is to make the middle a bit lower. From above the corner is a bit thicker, but still pretty much the shape of a 90-degree corner. When we have a closer look at the details, you will see it is just a bunch of windows with blue next to it, looking good with the orange. Below is a fence all around and some arch shapes. It doesn't have to be too detailed, as you will see this more from far away. The first floor is slightly bigger than the others, and so the first roof is also a bit bigger. That small one there doesn't count, it is there to separate the wall to add interest. The roof on the top is a pyramid shape, going from slabs to full blocks. Quite simple. Now you should end up with one center block where you can build up the thing on top. With slabs you can recreate the rings, and to be honest this isn't that accurate, so let me fix it quickly. Missing are 2 spheres. Well, this could have been a bit more in depth, but unfortunately I forgot to record myself building this. And with that, we are at the end of this video. Congrats if you made it this far. I hope you were able to learn something new and find inspiration. While I didn't show how I built these block for block, down below is a link to download most of these in case you would like to take a closer look or want these in your world. Until the next time, goodbye!